Good morning, all of you that are awake this morning after losing an hour of sleep. So can you feel it? Yes, okay, I know. So everybody can kind of feel it, and you can tell the other half of the church really feels it because they couldn't get out of bed. So anyways, hey, today we're going to be continuing on our Understanding the Real Jesus series. But on Friday, I kind of scrapped it and just went a different direction this morning just because of the current events in the church. That I thought we would talk about some this morning that would just kind of put things in light and help us as we kind of move forward with some things. So today is one of those things. I'll bring that sermon that we're supposed to teach today, maybe back, or maybe I just totally scrap it, and I just keep moving on with the series. But anyways, if you have not heard yet, Stephen Letterman will be stepping down from full-time ministry here at Christview starting March 23rd. So he'll be here for a couple more weeks full-time to become a police officer in Bartlesville. Did I get that right? I didn't say cop this time. I gave him proper respect with police officer, all right? So he'll be stepping down and become a police officer in Bartlesville. Just give you an idea of why and some of that mindset behind all that is he is 28 years old, and he's kind of has to find a job that has a career to it that can be a long-time career. And Stephen is not geared or never had any desire to continue in ministry beyond youth ministries. So he has no desire for my job or to be like a Christian education type guy or anything like that. So at this stage in his life, it's kind of a good fit for him, as I think most of you can think of him as a cop, or as a police officer. Stephen wanted me to say pig, but I didn't say that. Okay, I went with police officer even there and cop. So you can see him in that light. But what I want to do is just kind of fill you in on some of the details that will be happening with him and Brittany in the coming weeks and months. So on March 23rd, he will actually start at the police station in Bartlesville with them for kind of like an instruction week. That will also be that Wednesday night, our skate party. And so they are letting him come back for that so he can be here for our skating event on that Wednesday night. So he has that. The following week, he will actually start 12 weeks of training in Ada at the Cleat training facility in Ada. And he'll be there from Tuesday to Friday each week, full-time training. He lives on campus there with them for that 12 weeks. During that time, so the last 6 weeks of Wednesday nights, he will not be able to be back here with us, which means he's leaving me and Christian hanging out to dry. I went and sit next to him personally. I would just move a seat over at Christian. So he won't be able to do that, but Sundays he will be back in town on the weekend, so he'll still be here in the regular stuff on Sunday morning, so he'll still teach Sunday school. We'll let him do some of the announcements so we can get someone faster up here and start doing that. It's kind of a nice break because I've been wanting to get rid of him, but I didn't know how to do it on the announcement side of things. But he will still be on weekends, oversee some of the children's classes and teach and stuff like that during that 12 weeks of training. After the 12 weeks of training, then he'll get his new schedule on the police force, and who knows what that will be. So then they will kind of just at that point cycle into being church members like the rest of you. They're going to continue on being church members here and being active at this church. So they'll find their places they want to serve at that point and just a regular active member of our church. So with that said, and just giving an idea of how a little bit of that will work, even Brittany is still going with our teens for the high school conference, so I will lead that up because most likely he's not available because he won't have vacation. So I'll lead that up, but Brittany will still be going as the female sponsor with some of that stuff, and depending on if we have a new person hired at that time, we might as well. So after service today, we will begin the process of looking to fill that position, and we will start putting stuff out on the internet. So if you see any stuff from our church that way, feel free to like it and share it or whatever, because we just need to get word out that we are looking for a family minister, and we will start that process immediately, looking for a full-time person to take that spot that he's going to leave open. With that said, we are a very unique church, and that's why I want to talk to you about this morning a bit, is at this point in our church's history, we are very unique, and so it's going to take a unique individual to come in and fill the shoes some of Stephen. And so I just want to talk about how we are unique some as a church this morning and kind of go through that, because I think that'd be good for us to understand as we start this process of looking to find a new family minister that way. So the first thing I want to let you know is this. I want to thank you for being the church that you are. In Hebrews chapter 13, it says this. It says, "Obey your spiritual leaders and do what they say. Their work is to watch over your souls, and they are accountable to God. Give them reason to do this with joy and not with sorrow." So we have here is kind of what you as a congregation, it teaches you that you're supposed to be a type of congregation where it's a joy to be in leadership and not a burden, not something that's horrible. And I just want all of you to know from the ministry staff of things that it is a pleasure to serve you in ministry as a staff of this church. It is truly enjoyable. We have a great time with it. And to give you a kind of brief understanding of how beneficial it is to have a church like you, is I want to share with you kind of wound that you have really healed in Stephen and Brittany from before coming here to this church. So I'll give you a little background of how we got Stephen. 5 years ago, he was actually selling Honda cars, and that's why I have a Honda now, because he kept pressuring me, get a Honda, get a Honda. But he was selling cars at that time up in Bartlesville at the Honda dealership, and he was out of ministry. So he had actually done 2 years a year in college and a year full-time ministry right out of college at a church that really was not a healthy church, that, as you see with a lot of ministers, wounded them in ways and treated them in ways that made them just go, why do ministry? And we're getting out of ministry. So they had actually left ministry with no desire ever to go back into ministry because they didn't want to serve in the church ever again. And it had quite a bad taste in their mouth. The way we found Stephen, somehow he called me on the phone, and through talking or whatever and different things, we ended up hiring him. But even in that process, Brittany was very hesitant to go back into ministry, and Stephen was pretty hesitant to go back into ministry because of what they had already went through and just kind of going, we don't want to do that. What I can tell you is this, after 5 years of serving at this church with you, they love the church again. Okay, they loved it. It's why they want to stay here. It's why they still want to be part of this body. Is you've taken a couple of people who would have left the church and had a lot of resentment towards it to being two people who love the church now, and when they leave full-time ministry, still want to be part of it. And that's something that you need to applaud yourselves on. That's the pleasure it is to serve you. Is it's fun to serve you guys as a congregation and be leaders in this body, and it's an encouragement. And it's not something we ever feel like we're getting beat down or anything like that and fatigued or anything. And that's something great to say about you as a church. So I just want to thank you for being that type of church for us to lead and to serve at. That's a unique thing for us to get to. So I've served in ministry now for 24 years of full-time ministry. And this is the most fun I've ever had in ministry, is being at this church for the last 5 or 6 years. It's a joy to be here every day. It's a joy to show up on Sundays. When I go on vacation, I actually want to get back here just so I can be around you guys and hang out with you and be back with my church family, and I look forward to it. Like, I don't go on vacations to escape you like a lot of ministers do. I go on vacation and then be like, we got to get home. And then Autumn goes, you want to be home with them? That's Autumn. Okay, I'm the one that loves you. Autumn, not so much. No, I'm just kidding. So thank you for being that type of church and fulfilling that scripture. The second thing I want to thank you for is this, for allowing us and supporting us to do ministry in a unique way, in the unique ways that God has designed us as a ministry staff. We will admit it, me and Stephen and Christian now helping us some on the side, we are unique ministers. Okay, we do ministry uniquely. We understand that. You all understand that. And you let us be the people that God has called us to be and to work the way that we work in a very unique way. And in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, we read this a couple of weeks ago in Sunday morning service with that message. But I want to reread it because this is really how we try to do ministry. And it says this, Paul says in chapter 9, he says, even though I am a free man with no master, I have become a slave to all people to bring many to Christ. When I was with the Jews, I lived like the Jews to bring the Jews to Christ. When I was with those who follow Jewish law, I too lived under that law. Even though I'm not subject to the law, I did this so I could bring to Christ those who are under the law. When I am with the Gentiles who do not follow the Jewish law, I too live apart from the law so I can bring them to Christ. Do not ignore the law of God. I obey the law of Christ. And then he goes on to say, he says, when I'm with those who are weak, I share in their weaknesses, for I want to bring the weak to Christ. Yes, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some. I do everything to spread the good news and share in its blessing. What I can say is this, you give us the freedom, and you give yourselves the freedom to actually practice this approach to kingdom work. And that makes us a unique church. We do a lot of unique ministries and unique ways to try to reach the lost of this community. If you just think about some of the ministries we do here at Christview, I just kind of want to list some of the things we do that are kind of unique. Let me start off with this. We do some traditional stuff. So we have a fairly traditional Sunday morning service in here. We have a Sunday school service. We have our ladies' Bible study on Wednesday mornings, some traditional type ministries. But some of the other things we do that are not as traditional is, one, you let me do music with the minister once a month. Okay? And hopefully you enjoy that. Is that still going well? Just nod of head? Okay, so we'll keep doing that. Okay, so that's kind of a unique thing that we'll keep doing. So you let us do that, and that was one of those experiments. I didn't know how it would go, and it seems like it's going well, and people are good with that. On Wednesday nights, we have reached over 125 different kids and teens from this neighborhood that have little to no church background over this program year. So that's how many we've had come through the doors this year. And if you haven't been here on Wednesday nights, you know it's a very unique ministry. I was just talking to a lady yesterday because they had the second park meeting here, the public meeting over at the school. So since I'm on the steering committee, I had to be in there for that. And we were over there, and I was talking to the main architectural lady. And we were just talking on the side, and she's a Christian. She goes to some Baptist church here in town. That's like 800 or 900 people or something. And we were talking about how we do ministry and talking about our Wednesday nights. And she's like, how many do you have on Wednesday nights? And I said, well, we typically have about 80 to 90 kids here on a Wednesday night right now. And she's like, we only have like 60 out for ours. And she's like, what are you guys doing? I'm like, it's just different. Like, your 60 and our 80 or 90 are totally different groups. Like, it's just unique. It's different. She's like, that's amazing. I'm like, yeah, it is kind of amazing what God's doing with that. But it is a unique ministry. You allow us to do open gyms here on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we do that right after school hours. And I have like 10 to 15 kids on Tuesdays that I work with playing basketball there. And then we have like another 5 or 6 that are usually here on Thursdays that we work with building relationships there. Fitness Sundays is a unique thing we do. And for Fitness Sundays, we have about 35 different basketball players that are through here through Fitness Sundays that we get to work with and build relationships with and build a connection with, where it's kind of a unique ministry. And I know there's several of you here that are involved in that as well, where we just try to build relationships with these guys that are coming to play, and some of them are girls as well. We have our monthly food bank, and this is one of those I think sometimes we forget because we've been doing it so long and it's such a routine of ours. We don't realize how unique it is, and it is very unique for our size to run a community food bank like we do and feed 80 to 100 families every single month here, where we give them like an entire grocery cart of food and take it out, and probably 50% of our church is somewhat involved with that at different times. So that's a very unique ministry we do there. We have several of you that are foster parents where you provide the love, safety, and stability that some kids in the foster care system desperately need, and we do that as a church. And just recently, in the last 2 weeks, Bovers Elementary, which is the elementary school in my neighborhood, where Autumn teaches reading over there now, they actually invited our staff in. Every Monday, we go over there now and we eat with the third graders, and then we go go out to recess with them. And the reason they asked us in is because they saw the results of some of our kids that were with us last year and seen how the kids have transformed in their school, because they were kids that were constantly in trouble. And this year, they're not having them in the office hardly at all. And so they invited us over if we could just start mentoring their kids. So they've asked us as a church to go into the public schools to sit with this third grade class. So me, Christian, and Stephen go over there and we hang out with them, and then we go out to recess. And last week, I think Christian played soccer and Stephen played football and I shot basketball. So we just go over there and we hang out with them, and what they want us to do is continue with that class for the next 3 years while they're in Bover, so we can build long-term relationships with them and do that with them. So that's one of those unique ministries you allow us to do, which is unique. And our leadership here and you as a congregation support us to allow us to do ministry the way that God designed us to do ministry, which is different. In Mark chapter 2, it also says this. In this instance, what you have is it's going to mention Levi here in Mark chapter 2. That's Matthew, that you know, one of Jesus' disciples. He's Levi or Matthew. So this is Matthew, and it says this. Later, Levi, Matthew, invited Jesus. This is right after Jesus recruited him to be one of his 12. And he says, Levi invited Jesus and his disciples to his home as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other disreputable sinners. There were many of these kinds of people among Jesus' followers. So it goes, there's a bunch of these people that society didn't like hanging out with Jesus that were his followers. And it says, but when the teachers of the religious law, so the religious people who were there, the Pharisees, saw him eating with the tax collectors and other sinners, they asked the disciples, why does he eat with such scum? So the religious people go, why is he spending time with us instead of us? Why is he putting that effort in? And it says, when Jesus heard this, he told them, healthy people don't need a doctor, sick people do. I have come to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners. To be honest with you, being in church for my entire life, I grew up in a minister's home. I was an atheist. I rejected a lot of it, but I grew up in a minister's home. This is the only thing I've known for 45 years of my life is ministry. I can be honest with you and tell you the ministry we do right now at this church, in any other church I've been part of, would have said these people that you're bringing into the church, they need to be quiet or they need to leave until they start conforming to the way that we speak, we talk, we look, and they need to start conforming to the way we want them to before they can be here regularly. And that is not how this church has been, and that is very unique. Many churches are like the Pharisees in this account where Jesus is with Matthew and these other sinners that are spending time with him, and they're on the outsides going, get away from them and spend time with us. Spend all of your attention on us. And Jesus says, hey, you're the healthy people, okay? They're the sick ones. They're the ones that need the doctor. They're the ones that need the gospel. You're the healthy ones. I don't need to spend as much time with you right now because you don't even know that you have problems because you think you have it all figured out. And so you allow us to do that at this church, but most churches would not allow us to do that type of ministry at this church. That makes you very unique because at this church, love always wins and judgment does not prevail. And that makes you a very unique congregation. And I love that about you. I love serving here because of that. And that's not to say that you don't get annoyed and frustrated with some of the people here. Absolutely, we do all the time, correct? Raise your hands. See, Rick's right up there. Woo-hoo! Rick works with some of our little ones on Wednesday nights. We do get frustrated. We do get annoyed. We do look at things and go, man, we wish it was a little bit better in some of these areas and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, in spite of all those feelings, we love. And that's what Christ did. And we show them the love of Christ. And that makes us very unique as a church. In Colossians chapter 3, you have Paul talking about how the church should look. Like what the church's motivations, how it should look, should be. And here's what he says in chapter 3 of Colossians. He says, in this new life, so he's talking to Christians, in this new life as Christians, it doesn't matter if you are Jew or Gentile. So it doesn't matter if you grew up religious or you don't know religion. It doesn't matter those. It doesn't matter if you're circumcised or uncircumcised. It doesn't matter if you're barbaric or uncivilized, slave or free. Now, real quick, the reason he's throwing these descriptions out, in the early church, that was the people in the early church. So he's throwing out some of you are slaves, some of you are free, some of you have no basic, says uncivilized or barbaric. You have no understanding of basic societal norms. Okay, so you're a little rough around the edges is the best way I could say that. He's thrown out there. And he's going, all these people are in the church, and he says, to you, Christ is all that matters, and he lives in all of us. Since God chose you, be the holy people he loves, you must clothe yourselves with tender-hearted mercy, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience, which are qualities I see in this church on a regular basis with some of the people we reach out to and the people we try to love here, as I see those things. And then it goes on to say this, it says, make allowances for each other's faults and forgive everyone who offends you, okay? Which is another interesting thing, and I see that actually get practiced in this church. Trust me. I understand I offend some of you on a somewhat regular basis, okay? It's part of my personality, but you still provide forgiveness and mercy for that and some room for that going. I know where his heart is and stuff like that. And yeah, I see you do that amongst each other as well, as we don't have a lot of venom amongst each other. We don't have a lot of relationships in the church where people are clashing heads, where we make, as it says here, make allowances for each other's faults. We understand, hey, we all have issues. And that's okay, because what he says here is you make these allowances because you remember the Lord forgave you, so you must forgive others. And then he says this, above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds us all together in perfect harmony, and let the peace that comes from Christ rule in your hearts. For as members of one body, you are called to live in peace and always be thankful. And what I want to say to you is this, thank you for being that church. Okay, thank you for being that church that we get to serve, that we get to be a part of. That's something that's on all of us. We all play a role in that, and we actually live that out pretty well in our church today, and that makes us very, very unique. Finally, I want you to know as a staff, that we actually work really hard. I know a lot of you don't get to see us, so we work here kind of in the shadows at the church a lot. But one of the things I do want you to know is as a staff, we work really hard at this church. We do have fun, so you see some of our videos that we do post from time to time. So not saying we don't have fun, but we do work. And the reason we do that, and it's the reason I've always worked in ministry, is I want to make sure we do the best we can with the money you pay us. And we don't want to be seen as lazy. We don't want to see people who are taking advantage of the Lord's money, because we know we get directly paid by you guys giving to the Lord, and that's how we live our lives. So we don't have a company that pays us. We don't have a product we're selling or anything like that. We literally get paid because you guys are faithful to the Lord, and you see the work that we do as a church, not us as individuals, but as a church, as valuable. So we will always work hard for that, to show you that we are not taking advantage of that and just being lazy or anything. So we are a hardworking staff. I hope you see that. And one of the things I can say about that, again, that's a unique thing in a lot of churches. So that's once again is unique. In 1 Peter chapter 5, Peter throws out here how elders are supposed to behave in the church. And so elders or staff or whatever, and it says this. It says, care for the flock that God has entrusted to you. Watch over it willingly, not grudgingly, not for what you will get out of it, but because you are eager to serve God. Don't lord it over the people assigned to your care, but lead them by your own good example. And I just want you to know, as a church, that I love working here. I know our staff loves working here, and I know our leadership enjoys serving you and leading you. And one of the things that we do is we do the best we can to always make sure we lead by example, not by just dictating leadership to the people in our church congregation. Hopefully none of you ever feel like our leadership just dictates to you what you're going to do or how you need to behave or things like that. You see it in our example and you follow our lead. So in our elders, in our deacons, and our staff, we are all very committed to the work of the Lord here at Christview, and we all serve and we all work in different ministries here, and we lead by example, not by just dictating to you from our voices what you should do and then doing our own thing on the side. So we will always work hard. We will always lead by example, and I think that truly makes us unique as a church. So I say all that today to remind us how unique of a church we are. But because we are so unique in who we are, how we do ministry, and who we are reaching for the kingdom of God, it's going to take a very unique individual to fill the position that Stephen is now leaving. So that's going to be the struggle, is the circumstances around it I actually find peace with. I'm glad that I'm still going to see Stephen because we are best friends, and he's still going to be a part of the church and stuff like that. So I'm glad of that angle of it. But at the same time, I do know how tough it's going to be to find someone that can fill what we do here at this church because of how unique we are going forward. And that's going to be a bit of a struggle. So what I'm asking you today is, and why I wanted to do the sermon, is we all need to be in prayer about this. And it needs to be added to our daily routine of things that we are praying for. Because we're going to need wisdom, and we're going to need the eyes and the ears to be able to see who God is sending us. And here's my conclusion. Because I'm at peace with this, I truly believe God's hands on this, and He the right person that we can work with to integrate into our body to continue to do the ministry we do and do fruitful ministry. But at the same time, if you ask me what that person looks like when I'm standing here right now, I have no clue. All right? If you asked me 5 years ago when we brought Stephen in, we were a much different church, and you could have hired a much more generic situation. That's why we took a risk with him, which was a huge gamble, because he was a disaster, a walking disaster. But over 5 years, I've honed him, and I've turned him into a good minister, okay? You like the curves? You like that? I gave you the nice curves, okay. But over 5 years, we have transformed quite a bit who our church body is, how we are, and it's going to take a unique individual. And so the way we hired before, it's going to be much more complicated this time, finding that right person. So please keep that in your prayers. Put it on your prayer day list that you are praying for that. If you hear of opportunities or see things, please pass them on to us as a leadership so we can follow up on some of those things as we start looking for that right person. So let me just thank you for having the heart of a God-honoring church as a church body here, and thank you for the pleasure it is to serve you on a full-time basis. Would you pray with me? Heavenly Father,